At the heart of human space exploration, the NASA Johnson Space Center, the JSC, in Houston, Texas, is where NASA manages astronaut training and mission operations, including mission control for the International Space Station and Artemis lunar missions. The site itself is 16,000 acres of a working research and operations campus, and it's open to the public for a tour for a fee. They have a ton of great exhibits to explore, so you can easily spend a whole day there, or maybe even multiple days. One of the best ways to see the exhibits is to take the tram tours, but make sure you get in line at guest services as soon as you get there to be able to do all the separate trams. We didn't realize this and missed out on going to Mission Control because there was no room left by the time we figured it out. If you want to go to Mission Control though, there's an additional fee for that. The first tram we got on took us to the George W.S. Abbey Rocket Park, named after the former director of the JSC, who began his career with NASA during the Apollo program. He even received the Medal of Freedom from President Richard Nixon for his work on the Apollo 13 mission. George died in March 2024 at the age of 91, following a long illness. First, we saw a rocket similar to Little Joe 2, which was used for 5 uncrewed tests, which developed into Saturn I, then Saturn 1B, and eventually into Saturn V. This area also hosts several engines and rockets used in early space exploration, including the Mercury Redstone. Then we went inside and saw the massive Saturn V, built to send astronauts to the moon. You can walk around the entire rocket, which is 363 feet long, and get a good look at the insides. When fueled and ready for launch, the rocket can weigh 6.2 million pounds, and according to their website, that's the same weight as 39 Space Shuttle orbiters. To say it's massive is an understatement. It's one of only 3 remaining Saturn V vehicles in the US, but this one is the only one composed entirely of flight-certified stages. The other 2 are made up of mock-ups and test components. This is the tallest, heaviest, most powerful rocket ever flown. The Saturn V missions took 26 men to the moon from 1968 to 1972. I say men because there weren't any women who ever flew on these missions, but there were many women working hard behind the scenes. On its final mission, Saturn V launched Skylab, the US's first space station. Originally, the rocket was an outdoor exhibit, but it started suffering damage. Between 2004 and 2006, it underwent an extensive restoration to preserve its aluminum and composite structure. Now it's housed in this special, climate-controlled building to prevent further damage. They also have a 7-foot-tall, one-of-a-kind bronze statue depicting the Apollo 13 astronauts Jim Lovell, Jack Swigert, and Fred Hayes as they stepped down from the recovery helicopter onto the USS Iwo Jima. Next, we walked around Falcon 9, the rocket that completely flipped the space industry on its head. Before Falcon 9, rockets were mostly one and done. Built by SpaceX, Falcon 9 was designed with one bold goal in mind: make spaceflight reusable, reliable, and dramatically cheaper. And it worked. Falcon 9 has carried satellites, scientific payloads, and cargo to the International Space Station. And it's the rocket that returned human launches to US soil with NASA's Commercial Crew Program. First launched in 2010, Falcon 9 is a 2-stage orbital rocket powered by 9 Merlin engines on its first stage. That's where the name comes from. With hundreds of successful launches and landings under its belt, Falcon 9 isn't just a rocket, it's proof that spaceflight can be routine, sustainable, and scalable. Next, it was on to Independence Plaza, where you can grab a snack and a drink and enjoy a little bit of the outside, but of course, the prices are crazy. This is where you can see the full Space Shuttle replica Independence mounted on top of its original 905 shuttle carrier aircraft. The 905 carried space shuttles 223 times. That's over 11,000 flight hours. This dramatic display shows visitors exactly how NASA transported orbiters across the country after missions, turning a complex logistical process into an unforgettable visual experience. You can walk up the stairs and take the elevator to the flight deck, where you will see how the astronauts piloted the orbiter during the missions. Over the 30-year Space Shuttle program from 1981 to 2011, 355 individual people from 16 countries flew on NASA's 135 Space Shuttle missions. Including repeat flyers, there were 852 total seats filled, with typical missions carrying 5 to 7 crew members. The flights saw 306 men and 49 women make the journey. Did you know that there are more than 24,000 thermal tiles made up of silica produced from high-end sand that covers each space shuttle orbiter, and none of them are exactly the same shape and size? There are so many working parts inside every space vehicle, it's kind of mind-blowing. You can check out the satellite motor cradle. It held the rocket motor and satellite securely in the shuttle's payload bay. And don't worry, it's hot in Texas, but they found a way to make it nice and cool while touring the inside. Fun fact that I learned there involved moving these two massive vehicles to Houston. It was quite the undertaking. In moving the shuttle, one power line had to be moved, but in moving the SCA, 110 power lines were moved. One of our favorite parts of the tour was the Starship Gallery. This area features flown spacecraft and historic space artifacts, tracing human spaceflight from Mercury and Gemini through the Apollo missions. They have a Mercury 9 Phase 7 capsule that was piloted by astronaut Gordon Cooper in 1963, the Gemini 5 spacecraft, Apollo 17 command module, and so much more. A lot of museums have replicas, but this is real equipment flown in space. So if I explained every part of the JSC in full detail, this video would be hours long. But some of the highlights inside are the Lunar Samples Vault. It has one of only 8 moon rocks on planet Earth that you can actually touch, and they have one of the most extensive public displays of real spacesuits, including gear worn on shuttle missions and beyond. There's just so much to see and do. In the International Space Station Gallery, you can learn how astronauts lived and worked in orbit with real ISS hardware and interactive demonstrations. The Artemis Exhibit is a hands-on display about NASA's return to the moon and preparation for future deep space missions. And don't forget the films and live presentations. They have engaging documentaries, live shows, and talks that deepen your understanding of space exploration. Now, for a bit of honesty about our visit. The astronaut training facility tour honestly was my least favorite part. There's a guide on the tram that will tell you what goes on inside each building, but you never get off the tram. You just drive by the buildings, and honestly, they are the ugliest buildings ever. True government boring buildings from 60 years ago, back when the JSC was established in 1961, which was known as the Manned Spacecraft Center at that time, and then renamed for President Lyndon B. Johnson, who was from Texas. But at least we didn't have to pay extra for the training facility tour. It was included in the price of admission. One tip. If you plan on doing both the training facility tour and the rocket park, you can save yourself time from standing in 2 different lines by combining these tours. We didn't realize that and wasted a bunch of time in line for the rocket park and then went back in line for the training facility tour, which actually stops at the rocket park. I guess we should have read up more on the individual tours before going. Without a doubt, the Johnson Space Center's $1.5 billion complex is definitely worth the price of admission, and it is a must-see when visiting the Houston area.